Have we got some more? 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we can make a start. If you're attending, if you're a student attending, if you could just make sure your video is on, and make sure that you've popped your name in the chat so that we know you are there. The presentation is being recorded and will be available for you and others to look at again afterwards. So that's great. We will leave questions to the end of the presentation. You're welcome to put them in the chat as we go through while you think of something you would like to ask, and then we can have a look at the chat when Steve has finished speaking, and have a look at your questions there. And I think Steve has got plenty of, or enough time, certainly, to talk about some of the things that you would like to know about. So with that, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome our presenter for this session. Steve Miller is the Otago Sales Manager for Computer Concepts. He has, I believe, over 20 years experience in the IT industry. So pick his brains while you're here. And he's been back in, you came back 2 years ago, Steve, to Dunedin, which is your hometown, I understand.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it is nice to be back in Dunedin, but one of the beauties of IT and the part of the IT world that we operate in is it is a global industry, and these skills and experiences and bits and pieces we gain from working can take you anywhere around the world, and I've certainly been beneficial with some of that in my career as well.
Yeah, IT's, well, I think it's been in it, come into its own for quite some time, but you know, certainly one of the things, and when we're looking at how the employment sector is changing, you know, tech is one of the sectors that's still, you know, floating to the top, if you like. So
absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I will hand it over to you, and I'll just kind of monitor the chat, and when you finish speaking, we can have a look at that and hook into some questions.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lindley. So today, guys, I'm just going to take you through a little bit about Computer Concepts Limited. I'll call us CCL. That's what we know ourselves as internally. I'll give you a little bit about the history of the organisation, a bit about our products and services, talk a little bit about our customers, and then some of the roles and the pathways that exist within our business. On top of that, I'll run through a wider overview of what our part of the IT industry looks like and what sort of other opportunities might exist. If you're really passionate about this part of the world, what are the other opportunities beyond CCL? And then talk a little bit about my experience in terms of being a hiring manager and some of the things that I'm looking for when I'm looking to hire staff. So hopefully you'll get some good insight today around the industry, around CCL, and some ideas to help you get started in your career pathway. So CCL's been around about 30 years, or 30 years exactly. We were founded by Daryl Swan in 1990. Now, it was very humble beginnings. Daryl drove a van between Dunedin and Christchurch, operating on Linux and Unix systems. He was a one-man band by definition. It grew from there to be operating out of a student flat in Dunedin with 2 employees, and nowadays we're a 700-person organisation spread throughout New Zealand. We had a number of major milestones in our history. One was our first data centre opening in 2003. So if you're in Christchurch and you're driving down Durham Street, you'll see a big red building surrounded by high fences. That is our head office and data centre. We opened that and moved our first customer workloads into there about 4 hours before the first of the Christchurch earthquakes. So that was a really significant period in our business. We had our data center, we had some enterprise customers start using those services, and we had a bunch of customers who had their IT services operating out of buildings that were falling down, that were unsafe for people to be in, and we were going into some of those buildings, pulling those servers out, bringing them back to our offices and standing them up on our infrastructure platform. So that was a big moment for us in and around the Christchurch earthquakes. We also had a business called Canterbury Fibre Networks. You guys may know them today as Snap. So that was a part of our business that we had originally. and sold off, and they are now quite a significant business. They've since sold to 2 Degrees, so the 2 Degrees network that people use for their home broadband connections started as Canterbury Fibre Networks, born out of CCL. In 2015, we were acquired by Spark, so we are now a wholly owned subsidiary of the Spark Group. That's great for us in terms of it gives us access to a whole bunch of additional funds that we didn't have previously, and has allowed us to grow our business really significantly. It's also nice that we're independent, because Spark is a very large New Zealand corporate, and whilst we've got 700 people, we still operate largely like a small business. We're very focused on our people, we're very focused on our customers, and it's very handy to have someone with deep pockets to allow us to deliver services to our customers and make sure that we can continue to attract good people. At the moment, we're working on moving our business away from traditional infrastructure and more into a cloud consultancy. So we should see some announcements from us fairly shortly in and around some of our work that we're doing with some of the major players. So you would have seen Microsoft announce that they're going to build an Azure data center in New Zealand, and during that announcement you would have also seen CCL as one of the organisations that were called out in that announcement. So hopefully that'll be the start of us doing some pretty interesting stuff in the public cloud space. We've certainly got a little bit of work going on in that space, but that's where the future is, getting customers to consume those services and drive business value from those hyperscale platforms, both the platforms here that will eventually be here in New Zealand and the ones that are currently around the world. So that's a little bit about CCL. I think I got that data centre timing wrong, sorry. It wasn't our first data centre that was before the Christchurch earthquakes. It was our first infrastructure as a service platform. So sorry for the error there in the timeline. A little bit about our services. What do we provide? So the easiest way for me to describe this is, if you think about a business person who needs to use IT to undertake their work, and you think about what are the things that they need a device of some description. That device needs an operating system installed on it. That operating system needs to run a bunch of applications. Those applications need to talk back to wherever it is that they are hosted, which requires some switching connectivity to allow the devices themselves to connect, potentially some wireless if you're connected wirelessly, potentially a data center, and the whole thing needs to be wrapped up in a security system that makes sure that your data is protected and that the bad guys can't get into your environment. So from user device to data center, everything in between wrapped around by security is kind of how I think about what CCL delivers. And you can see there we've got a bunch of areas that kind of outline the bits and pieces that you'd need to put together a solution like that. Our customers take sometimes just one service, sometimes they've just got a bunch of kit sitting in our data center and that's the only thing that they do with us, and sometimes they take an end-to-end semi-outsourced solution from us, whereby they don't have a significant ID department of their own. They just look to CCL to deliver all of that thing, from the service desk capability to the advanced security consultancy that they need and everything in between. One of the beauties of working for CCL is we tend to have the very best customers in New Zealand as customers of ours. So I've focused in here largely on Dunedin customers with a South Island flavour and a little bit of some of the big organisations that are up in the North Island. But we've got thousands of customers throughout New Zealand that are all the premier organisations in New Zealand. And the reason I call that out is because the quality of your customers dictates the quality of your business to some degree. Are you financially viable? That's important when you're taking a new job, right? And it's important if you're choosing an IT supplier as well. You want to know that the person's not going to go pop at the first sign of distress. And we've been really fortunate throughout this COVID-19 crisis to be really quite busy. Our customers have needed to stand up remote working technology. They've needed to support their users. They've needed to increase their security posture. And generally the organisations that we're working with are critical parts of New Zealand's infrastructure. So you think about SDHB, for example, they needed to ramp up really quickly to get a whole bunch of their people working from home in a really short amount of time. Same sort of situation with the Ministry of Health, same with CDHB. So being strong in that health vertical has been really important for us. and DCC weren't a million miles different. They had to essentially evacuate all of the areas where they typically do business and figure out how do they keep the city running whilst they're having to operate from home. What are they going to do about moving back into the office? It's the same sort of exercise from a technology perspective as they move around, and we're a critical part of making sure that that works for those guys. The other good thing about having good customers from an IT perspective is they tend to have the most interesting projects. So big organisations with decent IT budgets are able to do cool stuff. Cool stuff is generally good work. So it's always good to find things that are interesting, find things that are new, find things that are at scale and have some complexity associated with them, because that scale and complexity is interesting. I mean, doing the same thing, I don't know about you guys, but doing the same thing every day is kind of boring to me. The way we grow and learn is through new skills and experience and pushing ourselves to achieve new things. And that's true both in a business and a technical sense. So quality of your customer is really important there. In terms of the wider industry, there's a bunch of players. Obviously, it's not just CCL in the New Zealand IT market. Probably the biggest player in the same sort of part of the world that we live, which the way I describe the part of the world that we live is business to business to IT. So businesses providing business services to other businesses around IT. That's kind of how I sum it up. Probably the technical term is a system integrator. But the other big players in the market are your datacoms. Datacoms are a great New Zealand success story in terms of lots of good IT jobs in New Zealand. Obviously, they've got global reach. We don't have that. We focus purely here on New Zealand. We feel like the market's big enough for us here to do what we need to do here. You've also got your NTTs, your instilleries, large organisations that operate in New Zealand and have branches throughout providing services to other IT businesses. And just about all of those businesses are good businesses. They look after their people, they look after their customers, which creates for a really competitive marketplace, both for talented people and for customers. So I would encourage, if you are interested in this part of the world and the roles that don't exist within the specific organisation you want to work for, maybe CCL's not hiring in the region that you want to live in at that particular time, there are other opportunities to get into this part of the industry, get good jobs, and contribute to good organisations. And it's a small industry. Everyone kind of knows everyone. So once you build your reputation, it's easy enough to move around and get to the organisation potentially that you really want to work for. All of the big guys are here. So like in the part of the world that we live in, it's Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are kind of the big three in terms of business to business IT. They're all here in New Zealand. They all have roles here in New Zealand. They all work closely with CCL. So again, if you want to get into one of those big global organisations, potentially start in New Zealand and then take that international experience internationally, hopefully one day that's an appropriate thing to do again. Then this part of the world will absolutely allow you to do it from an IT perspective. And I've got colleagues who have started at CCL and they've gone on to Microsoft and they're now working in one of their offices over in the States. So that's a perfectly achievable career path. And for some of the countries around the world that are harder to immigrate into, having a sponsorship from an employer makes life a little bit easier. So if you are interested in traveling, this is a good part of the industry to get into, and potentially you can do it with a really good job, which is obviously helpful. One of the other good parts of this part of the world, so that's a bit of an overview of who's who in the zoo, is everyone needs IT. So whilst we're going to see a lot of businesses looking to reduce their costs in and around the response to COVID-19 as potentially their revenues drop off, or the traditional business parts of their business that were really profitable and not so much anymore, they're going to be thinking about how do they do that. Some of them will look to their IT spend and go, we need to take 50% out of that, 30% out of it, 20% of them. Most of them will go, how do we use IT to help us achieve that? So they'll be looking at where do we have areas of, bloated process sitting within our business? Where do we have areas of duplication sitting in our business? What can we automate? Where can we gain efficiencies? And generally, they're quite comfortable to spend more on IT to potentially save in another part of their business. The other beautiful thing about IT is it helps you grow your business. So it's pretty hard to open a store in America. It's pretty easy to launch a website in America. It's hard to deliver good customer service consistently across a large workforce, it's relatively easy to deliver good customer service across technology. If you get it right once, it scales infinitely to all of your customer base if you configure it in the right way and build it under the right architecture. And it's a growing market. So the IT services industry is continuing to grow at single digits a year, but growing. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in technology, business to business IT is a good place to be, and there's lots of good organisations that will be offering roles in the coming months or years as and when you need to get out in the market. So that's a bit about our business, our industry, our customers, and I thought I'd touch on what do the actual roles themselves look like. And I've kind of pulled it out into 5 areas here: technical, delivery, sales, product, and then what I'd call sort of central services, shared services. So every business will have a marketing, finance, commercial, and HR department. If they're a small business, it won't be a department, it might be one person doing all of those 4 things, but those functions have to be fulfilled for every business, and there's good careers available in those shared services within the IT industry. So one of the roles I had 3 or 4 years ago, I was working for Spark in Wellington, running a sales team for them up there, and they had an incredible HR team, as good as anywhere in the world. They're a 3,000-4,000 person business, and they had less than 10 IT professionals, and it was really good HR. Like, it was just as good as it can get, and those people wouldn't consider themselves technology people, they'd consider themselves HR people, but it's just an example of a place that you can forge a really good career. And I don't think people necessarily think of the IT industry as offering those careers. So if you do have passion in those spaces, and maybe you've got some technical passions as well, those are areas that you can certainly grow a really good career in. In the product world, essentially that's building things that are repeatable. So in our business, we have infrastructure as a service platform, for example. It's a whole bunch of compute and storage stitched together with a virtualization layer sitting on top of it, available to customers to host their server workloads on a 1 server, 100 server, 1,000 server, 10,000 servers. We don't mind. The platform's got a lot of scale in it. And obviously the more they'd like to host with us, the better, because there's a commercial relationship between the amount of services that you use and the price that you pay. So that's one of the examples of our products, but it could be anything. We have a antivirus as a service, we have a perimeter firewall as a service, we have a network as a service, and all of those things are products that are built with a combination of sort of marketing people, technical people, product owners, and then it goes out into the sales and engineering teams to configure and deliver them to the customer specifications. So if you're interested in building things, building platforms, and promoting those platforms, managing the life cycle of those platforms, the product world is an interesting part of the world, and certainly that role is repeated across the technology industry. Lots of people are looking at building managed service platforms as a service platforms that generate a lot of revenue. So if product's your bag, this is a good place to enter into. Technical is probably the one that I think people think about when they think about IT. They think about engineers developing, either using code or user interfaces to configure and support technical things for customers. So it's a really good pathway in terms of being able to get into interesting parts of the world and really find what your passions are. And there's a couple of different ways that you can approach that in a market like Dunedin. You kind of need to be a bit broad because the work can be lumpy, I suppose. So there might be a whole bunch of work in this particular part of the world, but then the next month it's in a different part of the world, and you kind of want to be able to contribute in both parts. So let's say, for example, one month it's in security, the next month it's in infrastructure. You kind of want to be a security and an infrastructure person if you're in Dunedin. Whereas if you're in a bigger market like further north, Wellington, Auckland, or globally, one of the big cities somewhere in the world, you can very much be specialist in one thing. So you could just be a security person, don't have any infrastructure skills whatsoever, and you still be highly employable in those bigger markets. In the smaller markets, you do need those multiple strings to your bow, because if there's no security work and you only know security, you're going to either have to travel, or you're going to be sitting there going, well, what am I going to do to generate some work? And you might have to go sell something, go and do some consultancy, generate some business. And generally, people that follow that technical path are much more comfortable doing work than they are in generating work. It's not to say it's the only way to do it, but it's just what my experience says to me. So generally those technical roles sort of start off in a service desk type role, where you're just supporting end users, you're doing basic break fix, and probably not earning an awful lot of money, but it should be enough to at least get a living wage. And from there, then you start to choose your specialties of what area of technology am I most interested in, and you can start heading off down that track, and move into a general engineering role, which generally means you're not supporting users. You may be taking escalations that service desk is incapable of delivering just through skill set or time, and you're working on more complex issues. As you start to deliver that to a high standard, the next sort of step is to move into a senior engineering role, which generally means you're not working in the sort of business as usual fields anymore. You're moving more into project-based work, and you're actually going through and getting presented with business problems and coming up with technical solutions that match those business problems, creating the scope of the project, and often a large part of delivering the project. And then within our business, the next step is a technical consultant. So you are moving away from 100% of your day doing to probably 50% of your day doing, 50% of your day consulting with customers. So sitting down with them and talking them through where their technology and business problems are, and helping them to identify priorities and helping them develop roadmaps. And there's much more people skills in those senior roles. And those technical consultant roles are really hard fought in our business. It's probably the sort of hero role of CCL in terms of the thing that people aim for when they start out. They pay well, they're really well respected, they have a lot of flexibility in them, and they kind of get the opportunity to do whatever interests them to some degree, as long as it adds value to customers and generates some revenue. So that's kind of the technical world. I describe sort of the generalist path. If you don't want to be a generalist, there is a bunch of specialist paths. So say, for example, security, you want to be a security consultant. When you get to maybe systems or senior, you would branch off down that security path and head off down there. In our business, it's still handy to have some of those skills, because if you only know security but you don't know networks, your ability to actually troubleshoot a complex issue for a customer is going to be low. So we kind of want you to at least have that overview of how a customer's environment works, how it stitches together, where's the problem likely to be, or what are the gotchas that you've got to look out for, so you can find those before they trip you up. So that's the technical bit. Delivery is two kind of key roles. One is the project management path, which starts out in project coordination, moves into project management, and ultimately into program management. So program management's organising multiple projects at a single time as a single deliverable. Again, they're good roles that have a lot of autonomy associated with them, a lot of authority, decent budgets that you're looking after. I've just got off a project that we were working on that was $5 million over 6 months. So it's a decent chunk of change to be responsible for, and the project manager was responsible for delivering that whole thing as a program, 26 work streams in there. So that's an interesting part of the world, and certainly good careers available in that. And the last one is the sales part of the world, which is where I live. Not many people grow up wanting to become a salesperson. I don't think I've ever met a kid that said that, but it is something that sort of people stumble into. They find that they've got an affinity for it. And again, a lot of autonomy, a lot of variation in how your days change, and probably pays a little bit better than most of the other roles if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, then you won't make any money. But that's the nature of sales. In our business, there's relationship management, so owning the relationship with an individual customer, making sure they get what they need to, upsell, cross-sell into those customers, through to business development, where you're just responsible for going out and collecting new customers, acquiring new customers, and kind of everything in between. So sales isn't, again, not something people consider as a part of an IT career, but certainly lots of good careers available in that space. This is my last slide. So just around what do I look for when I'm hiring? The big one for me is to stand out. So depending on the role I'm looking for, I can get anywhere from 0 CVs if I'm looking for someone really individual with a really individual skill set, through to hundreds of CVs. And if I've got 100 CVs, the thing I'm trying to do is I'm trying to shortlist as fast as I possibly can, because I've got limited time and I don't want to sit there for a long time. If you are one of 100, it's really hard to stand out, but there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to stand out. How good's your cover letter? Is your cover letter better than the other 100 that I've read? Is there something in there that's going to catch my attention and encourage me to give you a ring and get you in for an interview? Did you give me a call? Did you say, hey, look, I sent you that thing over. I'd love to spend 5 minutes talking to you about the job opportunity. Can you talk to me a little bit more about it? I think I'd be a good fit. Again, if I've got 100 CVs, there's probably only going to be one person who makes that phone call. If that person makes that phone call, I'll give them an interview every single time. Because you've made an effort, you've found out who I am. Stalk me on LinkedIn, stalk whoever the hiring manager is on LinkedIn, talk to your friends who work in that organization, see who they know, find a way to get a recommendation as part of your job hunting search, because that will absolutely help you to stand out beyond just being one of 100 CVs. Another big one is job hunt like it's a job. So if you're not working, you've got a job, it's to find a job. And if you spend 40 hours a week job hunting, I guarantee you won't be job hunting for long. And it's not just about jumping onto Seek and looking what the CV, what opportunities are there. It's about looking at the organisations that you think you'd like to work for, reaching out to them, send a CV, do something to get the attention. And often a recommendation is really helpful, but being persistent and trying harder than others will get you better results. And I know it sounds simple, but it's not. Like if you've been hunting for 3 weeks and you've been doing 40 hours a week of job hunting, you're going to get to a point where you're starting to get a little bit concerned that it's not there. The thing I'd say, having worked in sales, is every time you hear no, you're one step closer to a yes. So you've just got to keep going, because it will come if you work hard enough at it. A big question I always ask people is, why this job? Why do you want to work for CCL? If they can't answer that question well, it's a real problem for me, because I'm like, this person only wants to work here because they want a job. If they only want a job, they're going to leave the second the job that they want comes along. So you need to think about, what is it you're looking to achieve in your career, and how does this role feed into that overall objective? Because I'm not asking you to stay in the same role at CCL for 2 years. In fact, if you come in an entry position, you're still there in 2 years, you're probably not progressing at the rate you should be. So I want to know you're ambitious. I want to know what you're looking to achieve in your career. And I want to be able to know in my head, does this job match what you're looking to achieve? Because if it gives you what you're looking for, then you'll give me what I'm looking for, which is an engaged employee who's willing to show up and do what's required for our customers every day. Another big one, and I didn't know this when I was young, but be humble. Like a shitty job in a good organization is a good step. And it might be that it doesn't pay you the money you want. It's not the role that you're looking for. It's not necessarily got the glamour associated in it, but it's a start. And I've had, I don't know, 15 jobs in my career across 5 or 6 organizations. And every organization I'll be able to progress my career, get promoted, move into new roles. But the first thing I had to do was get that first job. It's the biggest sale you ever make, is getting that first job. So be prepared to do something that potentially isn't what you want to be doing in 2 or 3 years. And if it's a good organization, you won't be doing it in 2 or 3 years. And then the last one is interview skills. So I'm sure you've heard this from your careers advisors before, but get good at interviews. Because ultimately, if you get to that interview stage and you're not engaging, you can't answer my questions, you're not prepared, you haven't thought about what it is you need to do, you get nervous, you go red, whatever it is, you struggle to find your words, all of that can be overcome by practicing. So there's hundreds of interview questions that you can find online. Google IT interview questions, you probably get every question that I could possibly ask you. Have answers to them. Have pre-canned answers that answer those questions. And then when the time comes and I ask you that question, if you are a bit nervous, you've practiced it. You know what your answer is going to be, and you can just rattle it off. And I'll see that preparation, I'll see that effort that you've put in, and that will differentiate you from your competition. And that's my last slide. So over to questions, if there are any.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate those insights at the end, and I know everyone else will. A lot of the things that you talked about, finding that job, which is you know, as a finalist is much more on our radar than ever, I think, this year, and how we do it. And, you know, we would give you a job at the Career Centre. Those are all the things that we talk about over and over and over again. And so it's lovely for us to hear it coming from industry as well, and know that we're all on exactly the same page. And I was certainly really interested in what you were saying about interview skills. Our students, everybody who's listening, has access. We use this, have available, apart from all our own resources and talking to us, a software called Big Interview, where there's a huge database of interview questions and how to answer them, and then the capacity also to set up a mock interview and practice video interviewing yourself. So, you know, I've had students use that and say that just makes all the difference because they've done so much prep. So it was really good to hear all of that. Now, I think the chat is just a little bit empty. So
that is all good. If there are no questions, I'm more than happy to get back to my day.
Well, I'm hoping there will be some verbal questions, and I'm just going, where am I going to unmute everybody? Does anybody have a question? Are you able to unmute I should be able to.
I've got a question.
Fire away.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm
No
an
worries.
Oakland studying computer science and entrepreneurship.
Cool.
I'm in my penultimate year of study, and I was wondering if you guys offer internships as well in Dunedin?
Yeah, it's a good question, and we have done in the past. So we don't have an internship program as such, but we do offer internships on a case-by-case basis. So if there's something specific that you'd like to intern around, like you've got an idea of what you'd like to achieve in that internship, let us know. We've done it with Signal ICT grads in the past, and a couple of those people have gone on to take jobs with us. But it's kind of tricky in that we want to give you something meaningful to do during an internship. Often for the university, you're looking for jobs in summer, and summer tends to be our quiet times because we deal with corporates. Most corporates take holidays over the Christmas break,
Right.
and they tend to kind of be closed. So we run a pretty skeleton crew, and the last thing we want to do is come in there and give you something to do that's not interesting. So have a think about what would you like to do as an internship. What are the things you'd like to achieve? And just feel free to, my contact details there, just drop me an email with what it is that you're looking for. And I'm happy to see what we can do. And when's the other one? When would you like to intern?
Right. Thank you.
More than happy to make some inquiries on what's available there.
Do you guys have roles in product management?
All of our product management's done out of the rest of the country. So we've got a product team in Christchurch largely, and some product specialists in Wellington and Auckland. So we don't have anyone in Dunedin that could act as a mentor. So Dunedin's a bit of a trick for us in that space.
Okay.
But if you were willing to travel, there might be opportunities over the summer potentially to go and intern with some of those product teams.
Cool. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Great. Any more questions?
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Bill.
Thanks for your session.
No worries.
I just graduated with distinction in computer science.
Cool.
And I wonder if you have any developer graduate or internship job in Auckland. Thank you.
Yeah. Development's kind of tricky for us, so it's probably the one area of the IT industry that we're weakest in. So we do have a DevOps practice where we're using development skills to manage infrastructure, but like pure dev roles we don't really have. What sort of area of development are you working on?
C++ or
Okay.
front end, back end. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you probably want to go work for someone who's got an application development shop, someone who's in that space. There are a few organisations locally in Dunedin that I could put you in touch with. Do you want to send me your details after this, and I'll flick it round? And you're looking in Auckland?
Yeah, Auckland prefer.
Yeah, I don't know in Auckland who I could put you in touch with. I'm sorry. I do. Well, we deal with a few dev shops here in Dunedin who are always looking, but I don't deal with anyone in Auckland. Sorry, I wouldn't know who to put you in touch with.
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Another good question. Anyone else?
Steve. My name is Remy, and I'm doing Bachelor of Science in Computer Science and Maths.
Hi, Remy.
So thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful. And from the presentation, I got to know that you guys focus on security, which I'm interested in a lot. So I'm first sem in third year. So I'll be graduating this year. So I was looking for an entry role in security, like consultancy or anything. Planning to do like internship over the summer, which can turn into a job later on.
Gotcha. So I think I heard that properly. Sorry, there's a bit of interference on the audio, but I think that you said you're looking for a security role and potentially an internship in that space.
Yes, starting the internship and then moving on to full-time job from the internship.
Gotcha. So our security practice is spread across the country. We do have security roles here in Dunedin, but security is one of those parts of the IT business that there's not really entry roles available in. So that is we've got lots of people who have done a year or two in another part of our business, then moved into security, just because part of security is a maturity assessment, is helping understand risk, and generally you need a bit of real world business experience to understand where risk lies. So, I mean, we've got one of our guys, for example, who's actually moved to China, but he still works for us, and he started off in a service desk 2-3 years ago, did a couple of years at service desk, and now he heads up our antivirus practice. So he knows all of the antivirus platforms inside out, and really helps with that sort of advanced threat protection stuff in that space. So there are roles there, but you won't likely get an internship in a role directly in security. You'll need to take a role before you get there, probably. But happy to put you in touch with the service desk guys if you're interested. If you are interested in doing a bit of graft to get to where you're looking for, then there will be opportunities in there. Just those first couple of years will be hard, yakka.
Yeah, as Bill said, I'm also interested in development option.
Sorry, I couldn't catch that. I'm sorry.
As Bill said, I think you guys are like less involved in software development. So if it's really hard to get entry-level jobs in security, I know that.
Yeah.
I was planning on doing like software development and moving to security, because software development is kind of needed in security a lot.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yep. I mean, happy to have a chat about that, because if security is your passion, it's a really good part of the world to get into. There's just a bit of work you need to do to get there.
Yeah. Thank you.
No worries.
Hi, Steve. I'm Nikki.
Hi,
I have
Nikki.
another question as well.
Fire away.
I'm in my last year at the moment, for software engineering, and I was just curious. So, would you recommend that we apply in order to get like an entry-level role into somewhere like you, to go for the service desk role? Is that where you think we should start?
That's the most obvious entry point into our business. So we have probably 120 people sitting in that service desk in Christchurch. We also have a small service desk in Auckland, and we've got people in that service desk that have been on the service desk for 10 years, and it's not because they're not good engineers, it's just because they like the sort of set hours of working on the service desk. So it's sort of 3 shifts that rotates, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours. So it's 24/7 service desk. So the benefit of that is you get good mentorship as part of your service desk. We're also a little bit different in how we approach service desk, in that we want engineers answering the phone who can solve problems for customers. We don't want people bagging and tagging calls. 2 reasons for that. One, that's better customer experience, is if you ring up and you get your problem solved immediately rather than having to wait for a callback. And secondly, it makes for better engineers. So if we're asking you to actually solve problems in the first line, that's a much more interesting role than just bagging and tagging calls. So it's probably a third one, isn't we think it's a more cost-effective way of delivering service than it is to have untrained people answering the phone. So it is an engineering role. It is an entry-level engineering position, and we've got dozens of examples throughout our business of people who started there and have moved into bigger and better roles within our organisation. So yeah, like that is the easiest starting point. At the moment with COVID, we're a bit funny with our hiring. Normally, we are taking probably 10 people in service desk into our and 10 new people into service desk every month. That's how fast that part of the business is growing. But we've just pumped the brakes around that for the next month or two. But keep an eye out. We advertise on those roles on Seek, and there will be a service desk role. The best place to get into our business is service desk in Christchurch. That is the #1 place to get into CCL.
No, that's cool. I'm moving to Christchurch in November, so that's cool.
There you go. So yeah, well, we're probably the biggest employer in Christchurch of entry-level engineers. So yeah, more than happy to introduce you to the right people if you can't find anything else.
Yeah,
And you've got my contact details there.
Thanks.
Oh, awesome. That sounds good, Nikki. Now, Bill had a question there just about whether you, Steve, were able to refer him any co-workers, if you had someone in your office that you could refer him to. I'm thinking the best thing would be for Bill to just email you on those details about that.
Yeah, that'd be good. And look, I don't know our Auckland operation well. I haven't spent a lot of time in Auckland in CCL, so I don't know it well. But let me do some research and I'll figure out who the right people are.
Great. Billy, are you wanting to respond? Is that okay?
Yeah, I think it was just a thank you. Yeah, happy to help, mate. Just flick me whatever you would like to flick me on that email address, and I'll see if I can find the right person in Auckland.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. It sounds like you're pretty open to follow-up conversations from anybody.
Yeah, happy to help. I mean, I think a big part of this industry is trying to continue to improve the industry and help people along. And a big part of my being in Dunedin is trying to help University of Otago students achieve great things. Which, look, most of them won't need my help, but if I can help a little bit, I'm happy to do so.
Oh, that's great, because that's what we try to do as well. It's what drives us. I'm really aware that one of the things that we do here industry-wise is that there's kind of that gap. A lot of people just have that to step over that gap out of their degree into actually getting their job without other experience, with just having what's we know there's shortages. We know it's a great industry to get into, but we also often hear they want someone with experience. I'm just wondering whether you have any comment to make about that.
Yeah, it's hard. If you've got two people that are both looking for the same role, one's got experience and one hasn't, it's pretty hard to justify choosing the person without experience as a hiring manager. But the thing is, you can overcome it with attitude. So if you've got two people that are equal, you're obviously at the interview stage, you're probably down to the last two. And when I was in my old role at Spark, I hired a 23-year-old to come and run a multi-million-dollar sales portfolio for me. And he was the youngest guy in the business by about 7 or 8 years, and he didn't have a lot of experience. But he had a fantastic attitude, and he just pushed and he pushed and he pushed, and it's sales, so you're allowed to be pushy. And he just would not give up without a real fight. And I had this other guy who I knew was going to be solid. I knew he was going to come in. He had experience of being good, but I also thought he probably wasn't going to be great. So if you can show through attitude that you've got the propensity to be great, you can overcome the person who's got experience, who's probably only ever going to be good. Because if they've got experience, why are they looking for that job? They should be looking for a better job.
Okay, that's good. That's really good advice, I think, and it just puts the emphasis on how good your application needs to be, your CV, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile. We do LinkedIn workshops every week. I do them. I'm pretty passionate. I put constantly on the LinkedIn bandwagon, I think. But it just shows, getting to that interview, getting good enough to stand out, get to that interview, and then that ability to sell yourself in that space.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to sell yourself during the hiring process either. Like if someone's shortlisting, a follow-up email, a follow-up phone call, follow-up LinkedIn message, all of those things are appropriate. Like I probably get, 20 to 30 bits of email marketing each week. So not a heap, but enough that that it's just noise. I don't listen to it. I probably get 2 LinkedIn messages a week. So that is a more effective way of, if you can figure out who the hiring manager is, flicking them a message saying, hey, I've applied, love to have an interview. Have you got 5 minutes for a chat? Just try and do that little bit extra to try and stand out. Because I think once you get it to interview, you've got a good chance. It's getting it to interview that's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. No, those are really, really good tips. Okay, I think, are there any more questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Steve. I think it's been valuable, the information that you've put in front of us today, and I really do appreciate your ability to be available for follow-up conversations.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Yeah, we're really, really aware of, you know, needing to work a little bit harder. I guess I liked your advice about, you know, looking on your job hunt as a job. And we will often say, you know, it's your extra paper this year or this semester. You know, absolutely, more than ever, I think in the current environment, it's important to do that. So, yeah, thank you very much indeed.
No worries at all. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. And yeah, look forward to those follow-up conversations.
Great. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
You.
Bye.